Imagine looking at the news and seeing that India and Pakistan have gone to war, and both countries have already detonated nuclear warheads. Within days, tens of millions of people are dead. You may be relieved that you're on the other side of the world, but you may be shocked to learn that people all over the world would die due to this scale of a regional nuclear conflict. I'm going to explain the full consequences of nuclear war from both the short and the long term. With political tensions rising between US and Russia over the situation in Ukraine, I'm sure many of you have thought about the possibility of nuclear war and the potential consequences from it. I've spent a lot of time researching this topic out of personal interest, and I've learned a lot of information that I believe needs to be shared. In order to paint the full picture, I'm going to explain the short-term effects of nuclear warfare, the long-term effects, and the effects of different magnitudes of nuclear war. We should first consider the immediate effects of nuclear war. A single modern nuclear weapon can potentially kill multiple million people in a very short period of time due to its destructive force. However, each bomb will also cause multiple individual fires, which often coalesce into a single massive fire, which is known as a firestorm. Firestorms cause hurricane-strength winds, which, by the heat of the fire, which in turn fan the flames and cause the fire to spread even more, causing even more destruction. On top of that, no first responders or humanitarian response teams are able to help anyone in the affected areas, as if anyone tries to go and help, they will be exposed to potentially lethal levels of radiation. On top of that, the hospitals in the area surrounding the explosion will not be able to handle the quantity of injured people. There will be far too many for any hospital in the world to handle. Also, the social infrastructure of the area around the explosion would be crippled. Of the area around the explosion would be crippled that they wouldn't be able to properly respond to a nuclear explosion. Early fallout kills many survivors of the initial blast. Some of the lethal radiation, which is left behind by the explosion, can stay for up to 48 hours. Depending on the weather conditions and the conditions of the explosion, the dangerous fallout can spread from 10 to 25 miles from the original explosion, and this graph shows how that spread works. While the exact size and shape of the spread may vary, this graph gives a good example of just how far dangerous radiation can reach. While the immediate effects of a nuclear war are terrifying enough, the long-term effects can potentially destroy modern society as we know it. The long-term effects from a nuclear explosion would cripple the environment and would kill many who are very far away from any original explosions. Fallout, which is the residual radioactive material left behind by the nuclear explosion, would spread throughout the region or potentially the globe. In the case of an air blast, which is where the bomb is detonated in the air, much of the fallout would make its way into the stratosphere, which would then spread globally. Much of this fallout will last for multiple years, and exposure to it can lead to many different complications for both humans and animals, which are at best life-altering but are potentially fatal. However, nuclear winter and nuclear famine are two of the potentially most deadly consequences of a nuclear war. The firestorms from each nuclear explosion would propel millions of tons of soot into the air, which would then spread around the globe and partially block out the sun. Some of it will go into the stratosphere and even take years to properly disperse. This would lower temperatures worldwide and also damage the crops due to it, which would then cause the starvation of many people and could potentially kill billions depending on the scale of the war. This graph shows temperature decrease around the world. You can see how some areas in the southern hemisphere are not affected as much as areas in the northern hemisphere, but some areas in the northern hemisphere, by a full-scale nuclear war between the US and Russia, would decrease by up to 35 degrees Celsius. A nuclear war would also severely damage the ozone layer, leading to intense global warming in the years after a nuclear winter. Many organisms on Earth are able to survive lower than normal temperatures, but not higher than normal temperatures, so many animals and insects around the world would die. Also, the UV radiation increased by the lack of a proper ozone layer would lead to many occurrences of fatal skin cancers. Knowing the short and the long-term effects of nuclear war, it's important to consider the different magnitudes. Irreversible damage will be done whether it's a regional or global nuclear war. However, the severity will vary. A regional war using less than 1% of the world's nuclear weapon supply would damage global food supplies and cause the starvation of over 1 billion. This graph shows just how much the rice production in Asia after a nuclear war between India and Pakistan would decrease. You can see how 1 year after a nuclear war, the nuclear winter would cause the rice production to drop by as much as 40%. And it could potentially take upwards of 9 years to reach its baseline again. However, a regional war using 3% of the world's nuclear supply could potentially kill a third of the entire human population due to nuclear winter. However, when you consider a full-scale nuclear war, such one between the US and Russia, that would propel 165 million tons of soot from the firestorms into the atmosphere, which could potentially drop the temperatures around the globe by up to 30 degrees Celsius. Many crops would die because of this, which would then lead to the starvation of many people, causing over 5 billion people to die due to the combined short and long-term effects of nuclear war. Nuclear war will cause irreversible damage, whether global or regional, due to the immediate effects on those targeted, as well as the long-term effects on the environment. The consequences of nuclear war should not be taken lightly. It has the potential to destroy modern society as we know it and kill billions.